Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started now. We want to welcome everyone to our webinar today. As you can see here, this webinar is a little bit different than some of our prior webinars. We, as most of you are all working from home. And so today we have for this webinar, we have Tony Cabrera, our Director of Solutions Delivery, that's going to present some of our demos for you today. And we also have Riaz Merchant, CEO, who is going to go over some of the business implications of the topic of our webinar today, which is generating business growth with hybrid cloud applications. And as many of you know, in the current work from home environment that so many of us face, being able to implement a hybrid cloud architecture is critical for many businesses going forward. So we're going to go over some of the concerns and how you can go about getting started with this in our webinar today. And we're actually going to show you how some of this is done, both on in the case of how you can get started from a development standpoint, and also we are going to show you a hybrid cloud application that's already in production as well. So to get us started, we'll turn the floor over to Riaz, who will go through the business aspect of this webinar.
Thanks, Oliver. Are you all able to hear me? Right?
Yes.
Sound check. All right, good. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. I hope you all are keeping safe and healthy. These are indeed some tough times for everyone. It is incredible to see that everyone in the world, no matter where you are, is going through exactly the same difficulties, working from home, trying to keep a safe distance and all. And it is also incredible to see the role technology is playing in this environment where we are able to continue to work and do things because of technology, and primarily because of internet and cloud computing. This webinar, we targeted most of our ISV partners to participate because the ISVs are traditionally have been deploying their application on Windows on on-premise systems, and there is a transition that's happening in the world moving towards cloud computing. So we want to talk about what we have built for you, what perspective we have, and how we can help you grow your business in this changing environment. So just to start off and set you up with some perspective, I just came across this number from February of 2020, that the 2019 cloud spending was $107 billion, public cloud spending. This was up about 37% from 2018, and this number does not include the situation we are in right now, which started really hitting the world late February to early March, when the US really started getting into this coronavirus. The forecast at that time is that by 2024, in 5 years, the total spending on cloud is going to be $284 billion. I think this number is going to only increase because more and more companies, after this crisis is over, are going to look at their businesses and say, well, what can we do to have business continuity? It is a given that companies that have infrastructure to allow people to work remotely without disruption are the ones that are going to fare better in this environment. And those that require employees to go to work, to their desktops and workstations and work from there, they're going to have a hard time and will be impacted severely. So these are some of the things that are going on in the market. There's a high trend out there in moving towards the cloud. However, we have had almost 35, 40 years of Windows deployment, 30 years of Windows deployment. And I think that most companies have invested, especially the mid to large companies, in their on-premise applications and systems. So they're not going to move away just like that to the cloud. What they will end up with is that when they need something quick, something that's scalable, something that's customer facing, they will look at the cloud as a possible solution to deploy something. However, all their mission critical data and application will still remain on premise because they have significant infrastructure. And a lot of companies also do not trust the idea, do not like the idea of putting their data in the cloud. So this is something that we encounter with our customers. They say, well, yeah, all of this is fine. We love the cloud, but I don't want to part with my data. And if you are in a business that's mission, that has sensitive information like healthcare, you will not want to be, you will not want to share your data in case you're liable because of GDPR and other rules out there, where if you have data breach, you will be in trouble. So there is this fear that putting your data in the cloud somehow opens it up to security risks. So that's one of the things that will drive the hybrid architecture, where you will have some of your assets in the cloud and you will have your on-premise infrastructure, and you will try to make it work. That's why Microsoft, IBM, Oracle, all of these companies are investing in making this management of this hybrid infrastructure much more seamless. So what are the customer needs in today's market? What are the customers looking at? Well, they want to be able to serve their customers better, right? So in this mobile world where people want to be able to provide access to data, customers need to be able to serve their customers wherever the customers are. If you have an Amazon app on your mobile device, you can place order from anywhere in the world. You don't care where you are able to place the order and get it delivered anywhere in the world. So that's serving the customer better. The customers also want to reduce their infrastructure costs. So while they have on-premise systems, they will look at optimizing what they must keep and what they can offload to the cloud, because the cloud as a utility offers great savings and ease of management and all of that comes with it. So that's another customer needs that we see. Customers also want the flexibility to adapt to business challenges, just like the coronavirus. So, well, hey, just like that, tomorrow, from tomorrow, you'll all have to work remotely. Now, our company based in Florida, we have always been able to, we are always prepared for the hurricanes, and we have always had an infrastructure that will allow people to work remotely. But when this thing happened, we decided, hey, we're going to work from home. All we did was that people just took their computers home and continued working. Nothing changed because everything we have built and use are all in the cloud. So that's a changing need, and customers that did not invest in those kind of technologies, we have customers who are still using character mode applications to run their entire organization. They are in trouble, right? They would not be able to continue operation or fulfill their orders if they're not able to adapt to the business challenges. The other thing is that customers want better integration. If they are using a cloud application, let's say they're using Salesforce, right? Best of breed CRM system out there, they wanted to be able to integrate with their accounting system online or on-premise, or any other enterprise application they might be using. They may want to synchronize customer data, contact data, things like that. So that would be an example where customers want their on-premise system, but also want the ability to integrate it with their cloud application. And at the end of the day, companies want to be efficient, right? The companies want to be able to be more productive. They want customers to be able to self-serve as much as possible, so they don't have to have more employees serving the customer. If the customer is able to place the order, look up the information online without bothering you, why not have that? And that frees up your resources to do other things. So these are some of the customer needs that we see. Now, for traditional developers in our books are typical Windows developers. You have deployed applications on Windows for 30 years, and you have a large install base all over the world. You guys and us also, we are also in the same boat. We serve our ISV partners. What are the challenges that you face? First is that you have to continue to evolve and support your existing Windows application, because that's mission critical for your customers, right? You cannot just say, well, by the way, we are stopping work on this and we're going to take the next 2-3 years to build a cloud application. That's not going to happen. You have to keep coming up with new releases and continue to support your existing customers and evolve it, and you have to maintain the development team that will continue to support it. However, a very real business challenge right now, and then we see this, we hear this from our ISV partners all the time, that new customers want cloud. they want cloud-based application. And I was talking to an ISV just the other day at a conference about 3-4 weeks ago, and they were saying, well, we get 4 or 5 calls a day, and they all want cloud application, whereas they are a desktop application, and they haven't even started on their journey towards the cloud, right? So the new customers are going to opt, and especially after something like a crisis like the coronavirus, people will obviously opt for new application in the cloud. And at the same time, you have this competitive pressure. So while the new customers want cloud, there are also competitors who have a reduced barrier to entry in coming into your market and offering cloud-based solution. You know, they don't have to have the full feature set you have. They may have 80% of the feature you might be providing, but they'll be able to capture some of your lower end customers or new customers who are cost sensitive, and they are going to create competitive pressure on you. And we have seen this with some of our customers as well. So you as a software developer have no choice but to invest in your existing system, and you will be forced to build something for the cloud. You have to move towards the cloud, and that's not going to be easy, because now you have to keep 2 development tracks going. You need to have investment, and you have to invest in training your developers to build the cloud applications. You have to worry about security and all of that. And for a lot of companies in our market space, which is small to mid-size ISVs, it is very challenging to be able to build that application, to build that 2-track investment, because the cost is too high. So what do we see is that, you know, this is what you have, is that you have your on-premise system already deployed to your customer site. You have your customer needs, as I explained, what they are looking at. And then you also have the fact that the customers already are using hybrid cloud in some way. Almost every company has some things in the cloud and on-premise system. So if you put yourself in the situation when we were looking at it, that what will happen to our ISV partners, say when they have to move to the cloud? Well, the obvious answer to us was, well, it's going to be some kind of a hybrid solution. It needs to be a hybrid where you can start off building something on top of your existing application, which is on-premise, but you start rolling out something in the cloud for your customers that can access your existing data. And that's why we are holding this webinar, and we've been talking to our customers that, you know, start thinking about building hybrid applications. So hybrid basically means that you will have some of your application is no longer a monolithic application. It is a distributed system. Some portion of that runs in the cloud. Usually it's the customer facing UI layer or presentation. And you have your backend with APIs and your data on premise, and then the 2 talk seamlessly with each other, right? So that kind of application we see as something as it's a natural evolution of your on-premise system. You have to go in that direction. If your destination is the cloud and you want to be fully cloud and you don't want to make all these investment at one time, you need to take incremental step in going towards that. So just to give you a visual idea that traditionally you have deployed applications as a monolithic application, client server. And monolith means that you will have, maybe you have an nTier architecture, or if you're a DataFlex developer, for some of you are, where you have data access and your business logic kind of tied together. These are the 2 different models you will have in the application, where you have business logic separation, data access, and going to a database with a desktop front end, or you will have a business logic and all together in a 2-tier architecture, right? This is a traditional model of application development, and this is how most applications are nowadays, and those who are deploying Windows application. However, what we are looking at is that we want you to look at your application in a different light. We want you to look at it as a distributed system where some components are running in the cloud and some components are running on premise, and combining the 2 seamlessly allows you to offer new solutions and new applications for your customers, right? And that's the idea behind the hybrid cloud application. We think that if you're able to do that, you will be able to generate new revenue stream for yourself, and you'll be able to create a compelling argument for your customers to keep with your application and start using some of the features you may roll out in the cloud. So some of the considerations would be, that when you're building a hybrid cloud application is that, well, how is the performance going to be? You're running something in the cloud, you're running something on premise. How do they talk? You know, what is it going to be? I mean, there's internet latency issues and all of that. Will that be an issue? Ease of use, ease of use in building these solutions, how easy it is. Are you locking yourself into some kind of a proprietary network? Or, you know, what is it? I mean, how do you build this or you start everything from scratch? Then the other thing is that when you have applications talking to each other, you're thinking APIs, and then you're talking about, well, which API protocol do I support? Because a REST API may not be as fast when you're doing process-to-process communication. So how will that all work, right? So in the previous example, if you look at it in the distributed architecture, you will see that in the cloud, you have a service running and another service running calling the same database, but these two services may be calling each other. And for that, a RESTful API may not be the best solution for you. Maybe a more binary protocol like a Google RPC or a Thrift protocol may be a better option for you. Whereas for web applications where you're accessing mobile or a cloud app or any other browser-based application, you may be well off with using something like a JSON RPC where your data gets transferred using JSON objects, right? SOAP and all of that are also options, but they are more for a legacy type of integration. So in those scenarios, you're talking about, well, what protocol do I support? Because once you go down your application path, if you want to support another protocol, you have to rewrite some of those code to handle that protocol as well in your application. So that's another challenge that we see. Security of the API itself and also network. If you're building an API, how do you access that API globally? Will that be a consideration? Once you build an application into this, what is the scalability of this application, right? And of course, the final thing is that you, as an ISV, have multiple sites at 200, 300, 500 sites, 1,000 sites. We have customers with several thousand sites. If you're going to build something to access that on-premise data and you're building some kind of a web application, do you go and configure the network on-premise? How do you deploy even your application? Will you physically go there? Right now, you're able to send them a CD, they install it, the network IT guy installs the application, gets it running. You may have some support, some kind of implementation service, but most people do not. They will just send you this, you download the application, you install it, and you're up and running, and you pay a price for that. That's how our product is for the drivers, right? So deployment is also another big issue we looked at, that if ISVs are going to create hybrid applications, then deployment will be a concern. Is how do you enable the remote application at your customer site? How do you access that data without having to physically go there and still be secure? So these are some of the considerations we took into account, and that's why we built Thriftly. All right, and you guys have probably received emails from us about Thriftly, and we've been working on it for at least 3 years now, building all the different components. And we designed Thriftly specifically for this, with this goal in mind, that we want to enable our ISV partners to be able to distribute, to be able to build distributed system and be able to handle the customers, the widespread customers they have, so that they can start with this incremental step on their way towards a fully cloud application down the road, right? And one of the key things about this is that it needs to be simple enough so that you can take your existing customer base and your existing code base and able to transform it. And this is really the key idea about Thriftly, right? The key idea here for us, the approach we took is that if you are looking at a large scale application, you need to be able to transition that into a cloud-based architecture, into a cloud application. For that, you will need to build APIs. But what if we simplified the process of building APIs for you, right? So the key idea for us was that what if we view every function that you have, you should be able to transition, you should be able to transform them into an API without writing any additional code to that. And Tony will show some examples later on where how you can just take a function and you're able to say, well, I want this to be a public function, which is basically a whichever language you're using, whether it's C#, Java, or VB.NET, or DataFlex, you have an ability to expose that function publicly. And we piggyback off of that, and we just explain, we say, hey, now if you're compiling with Thriftly API, and if you declare this, Thriftly packages, and you declare this as an API, we will do everything for you to make it into an API. So, and not only that, but it will be a multi-protocol API simultaneously. It can support multiple protocols, whether it's JSON RPC, is XML, SOAP, it's gRPC, is Apache Thrift. All of that simultaneously is available. And then we also handle the transformation of data from your outside world and putting it into your application and vice versa. So all of this complexity of building an API that requires a higher level programming skill, we've simplified that so that any entry-level programmer can easily build an API very quickly. And that's really the key value proposition of Thriftly is. And if you're able to do this, then you can extend this out to say, hey, I can take this, my large business logic that could be several thousand lines of code, and I can just turn them into an API, and I can call it securely from a web application. Now I've opened myself up to do new things. I can build new features. I can address some of my customers' concern. Maybe they want to see their data in a dashboard online remotely. Maybe they want to be able to offer a new feature that will allow customers to interact with their on-premise data, maybe submit a form or look up information. Things like that become very easy for you without having to rewrite large chunks of your application. And that's really the key. If you're able to do that, then you're able to transition into the cloud application very quickly. So this is kind of like some of the business ideas behind why we built Thriftly and why we see that as an opportunity. We have several customers, and I see some of them have joined, who have built very powerful distributed systems using it in different ways. And they have been able to transition into the cloud very quickly and are able to offer new solutions to their customers and keep their competitors at bay, because you're saying that you have some cloud component, your competition cannot come in and say, well, we are cloud-based, they are not. Most of the time, customers need a few features that they can run and access in the cloud, and you will be able to provide that. So that's what we're inviting you to do. I'd like to show you, if you're sitting in front of your computer, I'd like you to go to jrene.com. Are you able to see the site, Oliver? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So jrene.com, if you go to, it's a women's manufacturer, shoe manufacturer. They're one of our customers. So by the way, we built this whole site for them. We started working with them about 5 years ago. And if you click on shoes, right, and you can see that all this data that's coming back, if you look at this, this is actually a hybrid cloud application. Anything you do and you look up a shoe and you click on their size and business logic that's fired, where what sizes are available coming from the inventory, this is a hybrid cloud application. And this front end, the web front end, runs on Azure, and it has all sophisticated capabilities to handle large loads, but their APIs and their database is on-premise. And as you play around with this, you will see that the performance here is exceptional, which is not typically what you would expect or think about it. And part of the reason it's so exceptional is because of Thriftly and some of the API protocol flexibility that we allowed this customer to test out and build on that, right? So want you to keep in mind, play around with this, and if you have any questions, talk about it, let us know. Also, as a continuation of this, if you are interested in having some conversation, please send me an email or contact us, and we'll certainly do a more one-on-one session with you guys. With that, I'd like to hand over to Oliver, and he'll talk a little bit more about what's going on with our jRene application, and just to explain to you the performance and the load that is able to handle using Thriftly. Oliver?
Thanks, Riaz. So as he mentioned there, we're dealing with a women's shoe site that is really pretty standard when you look at it from many standpoints. They have a long history that way, and but the when you look at the history of the company, the web wasn't a huge part of their sales tactics early on, but it has become that way in recent years due to what we've been able to do with the website. And as you can see on this graph here, this is a recent 30-day historical analytics graph of the type of traffic that they're experiencing. And this is what we would expect for a decent-sized application. They are what I would call a middle-sized sales website from that standpoint. You can see they have, in the past 30 days, 17 million requests to their web server here, and that we're using some caching systems and things like that. When you look at this amount of data served, though, it's actually being underrepresented in many ways here. The actual data being served, this dashboard that I was using here doesn't capture all of it, is more on the order of 2 terabytes or 3 terabytes of data being served in the last 30 days. And this is with Thriftly as the back end for it. So the point of showing you this information is show that when you're using a hybrid application, a lot of people think that you may have performance penalties that come from doing that. And there are various places where you have to certainly consider the speed as one of the primary concerns. But a hybrid architecture does not have to be a slow architecture in any way. You don't have to be a fully cloud-based application to get the advantages of using a cloud architecture, as you'll see shortly here. So if Riaz goes forward to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how JRenee is set up. One of the things to note about your architecture versus JRenee's architecture, for instance, they're all unique diamonds in that way. Their architecture works for their precise setup with some of a lot of it is based on history for them. They have certain things in place that are difficult things to remove. They're ingrained in the company even, and so changing those things isn't easy to do. And so some of the architecture that they're using is based on those historical items that are difficult to change. And so your architecture may end up being different than this when you look at a hybrid cloud scenario. But this sort of graph here shows how many different hybrid architectures can be laid out. And the key to it here is the idea that you have part of your application that remains on-premise. So in the case of JRenee, they have Thriftly services that are accessing their database backend that is on-premise. But for the website, nearly everything else is in the cloud. They're using Azure as a cloud provider right now. And one of the things that we show here is this concept of third-party API management. They are using a form of third-party API management sitting in front of it. Not only the Thriftly API gateway, which you see right in the middle there, but their setup is also making use of a CDN to do some caching throughout the world. In their case, because a lot of a women's shoe site is going to be image-driven, which is different than a lot of business applications, it was critical for them to have a global content delivery network in place so that those images are served on a last mile basis. That's a speed optimization. Your application is going to have different speed optimizations that need to be tailored to your application structure and your client base. So some of those little things will be different here as well. They also have in place a geographic routing system here. Not something that you can really show on this graph, but when you visit their website, if you are in Europe, for instance, you're actually your connection to their server is being tunneled through a private network that makes it into the US here where their server is based, where their on-premises system is based. And the reason that's happening, of course, if you were just out on the internet, it would get routed here as well. But by being over this private optimized network, we're able to give them some of that speed optimization also. And then the other thing here is, in their case, as I mentioned there, we're using an Azure-based service. Thriftly works with Azure's third-party API management system. Azure has one built in, but it'll also work with what Amazon has to offer there, and even with Google's cloud network also. Thriftly has really been designed to be as broadly compatible with cloud providers as you can be. So from the standpoint of the protocols that can be served, you can see here in our example image, we're showing gRPC, which is a Google's protocol buffer sort of system there. But you can also simultaneously access Thriftly over Apache Thrift, over JSON REST, as Riaz mentioned. Sometimes a RESTful interface is great. In their case, a RESTful interface ends up working real well because you have the ability to do things like cache some of that also. So all of that can be kind of customized for whatever your scenario is. So with some of that in mind, that your architecture will be customized for you, what we want to do now is kind of show you how you could at least get started with building some of this. And then as we're going through the demo, we'll talk about some of the other architecture aspects of things. And then afterwards, we'll spend a little bit of time on that as well. So to lead us into our demo, we'll turn it over to Tony Cabrera.
Thank you, Oliver. So first thing that I want to do is kind of briefly go over how you can get Thriftly, how do you download it and set it up. And it's very simple. You can just go to thriftly.io and just click on try Thriftly for free. And it's just a normal create account that you have to confirm. I'm not going to do that because obviously I have already an account. So I'm just going to log into my account and show you what you have to do once you have an account. So when you first come in, under home, you can click on this build your application, and you can download the guide or view the guide. You can download the actual application, and you want to get a trial license. Now, the developer trial license is at no cost for the developer. And you just click on that, and you get an actual registration. I'm actually going to copy that reg into, because I'm going to need it here in just a bit. Okay, so basically that is the process. You download it and you grab yourself a developer license. Now, once you install it on your machine, what you want to do is you're going to come here and you're going to run the developer assistant, and I'll show you where you have to enter that license. All right, so you just go right click on it and go about, and basically you just go in here and you paste your license in there. But this license has already been activated, so I'm just going to cancel out of that and close that. Okay, so what I want to do now, I'm going to be showing actually two examples, one in VDF, one in C#. What I want to do now is show a VDF example. And actually, right before I do that, when you install Thriftly, basically you get sample applications installed for you on Documents Thriftly Developers. You get a C# example, Dataflex, DB, Delphi, Java. So different ways of creating Thriftly APIs. And those applications are, some of them are, basically they follow this basically they're doing the same thing in all the different languages, and in some cases they're going against a VDF backend. In other cases, they're just doing connecting to different types of databases in the back. But let's get back now.
One thing I want to make clear is that we support all .NET languages, right? So C# is just the example, but you could have VB, .NET, or Java, or whatever you want to use it by, right? It's all.
Yeah, so most of our example code is all going to be based on C#. Well, Tony brings that up here, but you can use it from VB.NET and from F#, for instance. And then we also have, as he mentioned there, Delphi support. So it's meant to kind of support a wide range of what's out there.
Sure. And also I want to just explain why we are doing these two demos, because we have had our products, database products for DataFlex market, as well as for the B-tree market, and people use different languages. So today we have a mix of both DataFlex as well as non-DataFlex developers. So that's why we wanted to show both the different examples. Right?
Okay, so I'm actually here on DataFlex Studio 18.2, and I'm just going to create a new project. Now, once Thriftly has been installed on Create New Projects, you have this Thriftly API project that you can just select from the list. And I'm going to hit OK, and I'm just going to call it webinar and hit OK. So basically, I just get a very simple, I'm just going to clean a little bit here. I don't need any of that. I get a very simple, clean shell for Thriftly. Now, all I need to do to create a, in essence, I'm going to just create a hello world type of API call. It's this, and I'm just going to paste it in there. And so I have added this very simple function in here that just takes one parameter and returns that, hello plus that. And in order to make it available as an API, all I do is just tell it to publish it equal to true. And now all I'm going to do is do that. And I'm going to compile it. Okay, so when you run it, then you get this Thriftly developer dialog. I'm going to go through some of the items here. I'm not going to go through all of them. On transport, you have frame and HTTP. I'm going to leave that right there. Something of what Rios was talking about earlier on protocols. These are the different protocols that we're supporting. And they're served all at the same time. But normally here, what you set it is to the default that you want. But basically, by setting on the header of your call, you can tell what kind of protocol you want to use. The next one over here on the port is if you want to serve it locally inside your network, it will be served on that port. And then in coding, you have ANSI UTF-8. Okay. Now, normally the first time that you come in here, this is unchecked. So you want to check the enable gateway. And basically with a gateway, it's the way that we proxy your API to the internet. Now, when you do that, you get to select a location. And in this case, we have 3, Brazil, Netherlands, and Texas. Basically, obviously, you want to select the one that is closest to you. And I'm going to go with just Texas. And I'm going to hit start.
Now, one thing I want to make clear is that these locations of these gateways will expand as our user base expands. So for example, if we find that we have a customer wanting to use Thriftly, say in Africa somewhere, we will very quickly fire up our gateway in that region so that they have less latency in accessing their APIs.
Okay. So when we do that, we get the browser comes up and it shows you this is the location where your API is being served right there. So you can just, that's what you want to share with the front-end developer that's going to write or is going to write the code that's going to consume that API.
Can you share that in the chat, Tony?
Yeah.
So what he's sharing there, you should be able to open it up, and possibly even before he gets to it, you can call that API that he's going to be showing here. It's running, it's available on the internet to everyone here and now.
I don't see that in the chat. Please.
Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
My chat window's hidden somewhere. Where are you? There we go. Okay, panels. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, you guys want to try that out? So now, built into Thriftly, then we have a test environment, and I clicked on the little test API right there, and it brings me up to this test environment that we have. It's built into it. So I'm just gonna say, come here. I mean, basically you got the location, and this is the what I'm calling, and I'm just going to just put Tony. Oops, what can I type in there? There we go.
Once you overwrote your URL, it's trying to send it to Tony now. Tony.
Oh, okay. Well, that I will do it. Here, I'm just going to close it in. That's why it's good to have multiple sets of eyes. And there we go. So, hello, Tony. So, just to explain a little bit about what's happening here. So this is running on a VM on my laptop inside my home network here. But just by doing that, it's actually being exposed to the internet without me having to go in and mess with my firewall, or having to have a static IP address or anything. Thriftly deals with all of that for you.
You can imagine how valuable that sort of thing is when you look at the variety of customers an ISV has to deal with that may have their own network administration. They have different types of equipment on premises, and all of these things make rolling out a web server, for instance, within their network something that's very time consuming. But with Thriftly, you can skip all of that. By using that gateway network, you can expose that API just as easy as Tony showed.
Okay, now I'm gonna, because this is a fairly simple call, now I'm gonna just go over a little bit more complex one. So I am only going to add that, and basically I'll show you what's in there. It's just so that we can connect to a database. This is actually, we're using a local, it's connecting to a local DB database. So that's what that is. And then I'm going to copy through functions. Okay, so I'm going to come in here. Okay, so basically what I've added, let me format that a little there. So the hello calls on this servers that I called, hello world. I created another service. You can organize your API calls into services, and you can have multiple services within one endpoint. So this one's called location service, and I added a struct for the location. And this is just a little helper function to get data from the from the location table into my struct. In this case, I'm pulling it, right off the file buffer, but you could have been getting it from the data dictionary or someplace else. And then this is the actual call. Once again, it's a call that's being published. So it's just, it's called get location. It takes an ID of a record and it returns that struct. So, and basically, if it finds it, it calls that function up above to get the data out. If it's not, it's going to error out and it's going to return some kind of error. So this is a little bit more complex call, but it will work just as easy. So I'm just going to compile that. Okay, so under services, we have that original one that I wrote. Now we got this other location services, and I'm just going to tell it to start thriftly. Okay, before I go test it, I do want to show you something. Built into Thriftly, we also have some auto-generated documentation for you. So if you click here on the header of this service that we created, once again, I have the location where the service is being served, but it also tells me, it will give me a list of the calls that I have there. In this case, I only have one call, which is the get location. But if I click on it, it tells me, well, it takes one parameter, an ID, and it returns a T location. And if I click on that, it automatically gives me what that structure looks like. And that is automatically generated for any and all of your API calls.
So you can imagine if you had a front-end developer working separately than the person developing the back-end API here, sending them a link to this ends up giving them some of the basics that they need. Now you have the ability to also write documentation into it that will get injected in here as well to explain the call. But even just having this basic information is enough for a front-end developer to be able to successfully make a call to this service.
All right, so in order to test the call, I'm just going to go in here and grab a GUI for to test with. So I'm going to go in here. And then I'm going to put in the GUI. And then I got my struct of my data. I could have also tell it to return me an array of structs back just as easily. And then if I, do something there, I'm going to get location no found error. So it deals with returning the proper errors back to the front end so that the client side can deal with it. So that it's just a little bit more complex call. The next thing that I want to show is, okay, so we got these calls, but they're unsecure. How do we secure these calls? Well, that's done very easily as well. So I am going to paste over really two small functions and a struct, and I'll go over what they are in a second. So what I'm going to do, just right in here. All right, let me.
While he's getting that looking nice before he goes over it, what he was showing there, you notice that when he put an error state in there, in the call, it dumped a full stack trace of what's happening internally from that ID being bad. And you actually have control over that as well. So for instance, you may not want that in a production environment because it'll give out some details that you don't want, especially put onto the web, for instance. So you have the ability to control some of that yourself between a developer and a production environment.
All right. So basically, this is to create a JWT token to secure the calls to this API. So you get to define your token however you want. In this case, we've defined a very simple one. It has a date so that we can specify if the token is expired. And we put this level. We're not doing anything with it, but this is something that you can define based on what your application needs are. And then I added a login function. In this case, I'm not connecting it to any database. I'm just telling it, okay, if you pass it thriftly, I'm going to get a token back. If not, I'm going to get an error. Okay, so that is on the login. And then the other function that is needed to secure the call is an auth method call. And in this case, the token comes in here, and I'm going to check it to see that expiration date that we have up here. If it's less than now, then I'm going to say that it's expired. If it's not, I'm going to add 30 minutes to it and send it back with the return data to keep that token alive. So basically, these three are just the only things that are needed on the code side to secure it. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to compile it, and then we need to do just something else on right here. So I did that part. Now what I need to do, I need to go into the JWT configuration. And for that, I'll hit this button here on the top right. Okay, and I'm going to tell it that I want to add one. I'm going to give it a default name. I'm just going to call it default. I can select the algorithm that I want anytime. I'm just going to leave it that one. I'm going to click this little arrow to the right, and I'm going to go up here and tell it, okay, just generate one for me. I'm going to save it, okay, and close. And then that automatically checked those two items there for this endpoint. So what's going to happen now, I'm going to start up the endpoint again. And let me copy that again so I can try doing that call. And I'm going to go to the location services. And I'm going to try to make that call again like we did earlier. And now it's going to say it's missing the token. So I have to go in first and log in. Okay, so now the login, it returned me a token that I can use for the call. So if I go back now to that location, that token on our test environment automatically puts it there because it knows that we want it. I'm going to put that ID again there, and now it's working again securely. So it's as simple as that. Now you can pick which endpoints or calls are secure or not. If you notice, if we go back to this one I did not put in the auth on this call, so I can make it without a token. So you
and
can.
One thing to note about what Tony showed there is that all of that applies no matter what programming language you're using for it. So he used Dataflex as an example here. We're going to move on to C# in just a moment, but all of that applies either way. That screen that he showed with the JWTs there, where he was showing how you create them and all of that, That's also very, very unique, because almost no one has the ability to generate all of those types of tokens with the UI right in the tool there. So some of that was that easy. It is not that easy in other environments. Thriftly is making it that easy and makes it look like a trivial task. But doing all of those things, setting up that public key and all of that, normally developers struggle with that for a good amount of time because they need to understand all of that as well. With Thriftly, you don't have to have as deep of knowledge of it to do it.
Okay, so I'm going to move on and just quickly show a C# sample app. So same way, I'm just going to create a new project. In a new project, I actually want to make sure that you select the .NET framework one. In this case, I'm doing it in C#, and I'm going to call it a WebSamp. Okay. Okay, so I got my my new project now. All I need to do now is go in and add a reference to the Thriftly server. So I'm just going to go in here. I have it there, but I'll just go in so I can show you where it's at. Thriftly server is on 86, Thriftly developer bin, and the reference needs to be to this Thriftly server.dll. Okay, so I just added that service. Okay, and then up here, all I need to do now is use it. That server. Okay, and to get the Thriftly server started, all I need is really 3 lines of code. I'm gonna come in here and just paste that. Basically, I'm creating a new instance of it. I'm telling that I'm gonna add these my servers that we're gonna create in 1 second. And the next line just starts the service. So that's all there is to that. Now I'm going to create a new class for that my service. So actually, let me just add it from here. Add class. Actually, I'm going to call it that. I'm going to change it in a sec because I think I already have one called that. Okay, so on this class, I'm going to create a very simple call like the one that I did for VDF. I'm just going to come in here and going to add that, and I'm going to make the class public. Okay, and I also need to use the Thriftly server. Okay, so, and I mean, basically I'm telling it that I want to publish that, that function. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to go back here and change that to that. It's going to change that. Okay, and that should be all we need. If we run it, it should work the same way as the other one. And here we go. In this case, there's my service. I'm just going to tell it to start. And we can go into the test environment. Everything else is just like from there on is just like the same regardless of the language that you're in. And I'm going to go Tony.
While Tony's doing that, that actually is one of the keys. It's the same regardless of the language. So he's doing this in C#. He did it in DataFlex. One of the things we often see is mixing the environments. So they may have some developers that are writing Thriftly APIs in C#, while some of them are writing it in VB.NET or some other language in Java as well. They all can coexist, same interface on front of all of them.
Okay, yeah. So if we go back here, it's the same. I mean, this case is a very simple. It's telling me that I got that one call. In this case, obviously, there's nothing on the rest of that because it's just such a simple call. Now, there is, like I said earlier, when you install, you have a more complex C# example of this in Property Tracker, and it's a complete application, API application that you can see how we do the JWT token in C# and how we do more complex data aware API calls.
Tony,
Okay.
can you show that on the website? Like if you go thriftly.io/demo, I think you'll be able to see that, right?
I think the one that we have for the demo, it's a little bit different than the one that we use on the website. Yeah. I think that other one was.
But in case they want to look at the code in different languages,
okay.
Yeah, just to kind of like hint. So
okay, which one was it?
Thriftly.io/demo, I think you can go there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So we built this property tracker example that /demo, yeah, where we kind of show how Thriftly, like different functionalities of Thriftly. So if you're programming in C# or VB or Delphi, whatever, you can select the programming languages over there. Then you can select the different gateways. So for example, if you select a gateway, say in Europe, you will see that there's a little bit of performance lag. If you select Singapore, it's going to be different because of the performance. You can select your protocol, so you can see how the data is returned. And then when you click on the Build API, this basically shows you code samples on how we have done that, right? So these are the call that's being made, and you can see this would be any standard code. You can take your entire function code and just add those headers that Tony had added, and then you're ready to go. You'll be able to test the API. And then we also show example, if you click on test API, it takes you to the testing framework. When you click on the consume API, it shows you how you can consume these APIs from different languages, from different scripting like JavaScript or PHP or whatever it is, their Android. And then you can see the raw data that's being returned. So if you're picking JSON RPC, the data will be returned as a JSON object. If you pick, say, SOAP, Tony, if you go there on the top right, your data will be returned as XML. Right? So all of these things is done by Thriftly. You don't have to write code for this. That's already there. And basically, this is what the UI would look like if you clicked on the UI demo. It's the front. This is what the data is being returned, and it's nicely formatted with JavaScript and all. Right? Okay, thanks.
Okay, then that's the demo from my side. So let's return it back to Oliver.
So as Tony showed there, maybe Riaz can take us back to the slides. You know, being able to set this up is really a trivially easy task, and that's what we wanted to accomplish with this. And you know, there are a few things to note about it. One is that Tony was just building functions. Right? All of these examples, they are just functions. You don't have to go super deep into the protocols or anything like that to be able to use any of this. A lot of times the functions that you already have can be easily retrofitted. If they can't directly have a published attribute put on them, you may need to do some things. You'll notice in the sample application and what Tony showed there, he added a little bit more robust error handling around the error message so that error data is available to the web developer. So, you know, a little bit of stuff like that. But other than that, it's just a function. And that same function is available via all of these protocols simultaneously without you doing anything. He picked a protocol as a default in that developer helpers you saw, but that just serves as a default. There's a header that can be sent with each call that's in our documentation that allows the consumer to use any protocol they want to request the data and get it back in that format as well. And this is not something that's dependent upon web app or IIS. Thriftly is a native web server in itself. So you don't need anything else to be able to serve it. For the DataFlex environment, you just need Thriftly. It doesn't require a web app server or anything like that. It is completely contained from that standpoint. And when you're using our gateway system that Tony was showing there, you get a securely tunneled connection that makes it available over the internet with high-grade HTTPS configuration built in. No network configuration is required. Right off the bat, you have these secure APIs available, even in your test environment as well. And so it takes all of those hurdles that you normally see to building these APIs and just lowers them. Rather than having to jump over them, you can just step over them. The security with JWT that he's showing there, again, very simple to implement, not something you have to know every detail of the JWT protocol to use. We do all of that for you inside the Thriftly engine. And one of the other things that we have here is our free forever version that's mentioned here. The free forever version is not only the developer aspect of it, but there is a very small server that you can also use there as well that allows a single process, and it also has a little bit of rate limiting built in. But for testing an application or for a very small sort of application that maybe just has some occasional use, that free forever version is included with each developer license as well. And then we also have many other resources available. We have a whole series of webinars that you can access, but we also have some blog posts, ones that are especially important for those considering hybrid applications is this blog post on modernizing your desktop applications for cloud computing. And we also have a white paper that goes along with that goes into some of the details here and some of the considerations. Maybe Riaz can talk a bit further about that.
Yeah, these resources we'll make it available in the email that goes out, so you will all get a link to these resources. They're a good read. We make a business case of how you should look at your install base and how you can transition them into the cloud. One of the things I want you guys to walk away with, if anything else, is that the hybrid application is the starting point towards your cloud journey, right? So the idea is that if you're able to turn large chunks of your application, so we showed you examples from scratch, but Tony was cutting and pasting application. In essence, it's refactoring. You can take large chunks of your application, business logic, whether 6,000 lines of code or 10,000 lines of code, it doesn't matter. You can turn them into an API very easily, and now you're able to access it from anywhere. That opens up a lot of possibilities for what you can do. One of the possibilities that it opens up, of course, there's a hybrid application, but the next is that you can take the same API and put it in the cloud and build a new front end over your application to build a cloud application that you can sell as a native cloud application. In fact, we are working with a few customers, helping them do exactly that, where they have on-premise systems, and now we're building their cloud applications is already built out, and then now they're ready to deploy and ready to go live with their customers. So look at it as a step towards going towards the cloud, where it might take you several years to get there, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, depends. But the hybrid cloud is just a starting point where you are able to launch something new, generate some revenues from that new feature, and then you're able to invest that back into your application. So one of the examples we have is a customer, they make royalty software for music royalties, and the music royalty reports get very, very large. I mean, I don't know, it's 3,000 page reports, and the numbers total add up to maybe like $10 at all, because somebody played a song on Spotify, and the guy who wrote the song may get like a fraction of a cent as royalty for that. Well, one of the ways this software developer was able to solve the problem for the customer was that they offered a hybrid solution where the customer's data is sensitive, is on-premise. They launched a new system that accesses that data and shows the royalty reports to the users of the customers of the customer, who are able to view their dashboards, are able to download their reports. Otherwise, before the customer used to mail out these physical PDF reports, correct, Tony? It's like they used to send out these 300, 500 page reports every month to their artists or the people who were owed the royalty. All of that goes out. That's a tremendous saving for the customer in efficiency and productivity and optimization, cost, not having to have the mailing cost, etc. So these are the kind of solutions that you will have in your market that you can come up with. J&A example is an end user, so we showed it because it's a live system with a pretty large application base. But another customer of ours, actually Eric is here, he's joined us. He's built a distributed system for one of the largest auto part retailer in Europe, where he's using Thriftly as a distributed system where he can use local computing resources to do high intensive work and then send it to the cloud. Otherwise, it would take a lot more time. So those are the kind of solutions that people are going to, you can build today and start generating, adding on layers of new offerings towards your existing customer base. And then you can transition that into a full cloud solution down the road. So I hope that this presentation has given you some food for thought. The demos are there. If you have any questions or you need to talk to us one-on-one, just let us know and we'll be happy to guide you through some of these sessions and help you get started on some of those things for you. So chat. Any questions so far on this? All right, Eric. Eric, hi, Eric. Are you able to speak? Okay, Eric says he can't speak, but he was. We probably have his case study online, but you could see some of those things. Anyway, anybody has any questions so far?
Yes, we will have the video of this available. May take a little bit of time. Zoom, as you know, has been slammed a bit, so it may take us a little bit to get it out, waiting for that recording to show up, but we will be releasing it that way. So if you'd like to send it to other developers that you have that sort of thing, you'll be able to soon.
Yeah, and please sign up for our blogs and all of that so that you can get updates on various blogs that we are writing related to API development. We think that this is going to be the key going forward for you, and this is a way out for customers who are using, who are developing for the desktop, being able to go to the cloud.
Eric asked about showing client side with JWT key. Tony, maybe you can kind of pull up on your demo site there. Excuse me, not on the demo site, but on the demo that you showed, where you're doing the call and passing the JWT. And what we can do is just pull up the developer tools on the browser and kind of show how that call is occurring.
So Oliver, maybe you might want to talk a little bit about what JWT is, the JSON Web Token, and what's its used for. We didn't go into that, but there's something since Eric raised the question.
Yeah, so JWTs are basically it's a chunk of JSON that is encoded in a certain way that's passed as an encoded header when you're making your call, so an HTTP header. And the way it works with Thriftly is that header can be returned. When Tony did that login call, he didn't really go into it, but one of the things that he did was he defined that call as a login method. And when you have a Thriftly call that's defined as a login method, rather than returning a payload of JSON, which is normally what you'd see, rather than returning that way. The Thriftly server knows to take that and to return whatever whatever the payload is as this encoded JWT. And JWTs are something that Tony could take this this JWT that he has here, and he could go to I believe there's a website, jwt.io, and he could actually paste that JWT directly in there. In fact, maybe we'll show that afterwards.
Yeah, actually, I have that. Well, here, I created the token.
Yeah.
Logged in again. I can just go and select all.
And copy that.
And then I have it here.
Yeah, it's something that we use a lot. This is a site that has a JSON Web Token debugger on it, and he's able to paste that that token right in here and decode it. And you'll see that part of the reason it's saying that it's that the signature here is not valid is because it's using a local web server, so it can't verify the public key that's being used on that one at the moment. But you'll see it was able to decode it with those fields that he had defined, expires at in level 3. It also has the type of the token there. So this is a standard sort of thing. And you'll notice that it decoded it, and you can see the contents here. One of the keys of a JWT is that what you're putting in it shouldn't be private. It's public information, but what it has is it has a signature associated with it that verifies that the contents of it have not been altered since it was created. And that's kind of the key to how it works. So the server creates the token. You can actually create it on other servers. It can be from a third party. And as long as we have the public key available to us, we can verify that that token is valid. And whatever is passed in there, if someone were to try and alter it, you wouldn't even know that call had come into your server, because Thriftly would say, hey, this is an invalid call here. And so as you can see in the response that's shown on the right, that token is passed right there as an access token. And if Tony were to go to a raw call.
That's what let me do the call with the raw call.
Yeah, and you'll kind of see some of this.
All right, so I'm just going to click on this raw call over here.
So this kind of shows exactly what's been sent to the server. And so when we look at what was sent, you'll notice that there's a header up there. It was a post call with a host header, but then we have that authorization bearer. That is the web standard way of passing a token in an HTTP call. And so we're passing that token that was sent to us when we did the login call, and the server's decoding it and seeing it as valid. If in JavaScript on the browser it had been altered in any way, the server would have thrown back an error saying that it was an invalid token there. So it's actually a very simple sort of thing that, again, web standard from that standpoint, and they can be used from other programming languages as well. So, it doesn't just have to be used from a browser here. JWTs are often used in mobile applications to send that authentication as well.
Yeah, sometimes we have like a C# application, do the login, generate a web token, and then we use that web token to actually authenticate calls that are being done to other servers, like on a VDF endpoint.
All right, thanks, Tony and Oliver. Okay, I think we are running quite a bit over time. In any case, thank you all for being here. A couple of things, like I said, that you might want to take a look at our website, sign up for the free version, and also we have. Hang on one second. I wanted to show you this some pricing information that's there. One of the things that we have also made sure is that because you're going to be deploying it at a number of sites, the price is attractive enough for you guys to go ahead and do that, and it doesn't break your bank. And that's one of the things that you can check out the pricing we have on the website as well. Right now, where is it? There you go. So you have a free version. Then you have the basic version that starts at $20. That's enough for small websites or small web applications or serving APIs. The JRNA site that we have, I think it's running on a pro version, which is $200 a month. So for that kind of power, what it gives you, this is really a very cost-effective way to go forward because we are looking at a larger install base of customers. So that's something you might want to check out and take a look at that because pricing-wise also, this makes a lot of sense. We didn't go into a lot of the features. We only talked about HTTP. It can do TCP transports, like you can actually call these API over TCP/IP and things like that. But I'm sure that this was just to get you started on something. And then down the road, if you have more questions, you reach out to us and we can help you get going on some sample proof of concept type applications. Thanks, Oliver, Tony. Thanks for everybody to attend. It was a pretty global attendance. We had people from 4 different continents. So I thank you all for being here today. Stay safe and hope to see you and talk to you soon. Take care.